sure that those people come and visit our classrooms. Rose's grandfather, so this is Rose's grandfather and her grandmother, and she's going to introduce them by name. You want to give a little bit of an explanation, Rosa? So California's got a long, rich history.
It certainly does. And I hope that after the next few minutes that all of you will know a little more about the history of California. I understand you've all done mission projects already, so you understand about the Spanish coming to California and setting up their missions. We're going to talk about that as we go through. But first, before we talk about the history itself, I want to be talking about our families. Now, all of you should have a piece of paper in front of you. Everybody have a piece of paper there? Take your paper, put your name on your paper at the top, clearly. Across the top, horizontal. That's fine. You can either write it or print it, whatever you're most comfortable with. I always like to see how fourth graders are doing their work, because I used to teach fourth grade many years ago, probably about 45 years ago, and so it's always fun to be back in the fourth grade classroom. I taught sixth grade, and I taught middle school, and I was a principal for 16 years, okay? But it's fun to come back to a fourth grade classroom and work with a topic that I like very much, because I want you to understand about our state, and I want you to understand about your families as we go through the next half hour or so. All right, here is your task for the day, and I'm going to collect these, and I'm going to take them with me and read them over, and then I will return them to your teacher, okay? Here is your task for the next half hour. I want you to hear at least 3 things that you feel are worth learning. Oh, this is new information. I didn't know that. And write it down. Now, I don't care if you have 10 or 12, 14. You know, you can write down as much as you want. You can fill the page if you want. But I do want 3. At least 3 things that you found new that you did not know before this afternoon. Okay? That is your task for the next half hour. All right. Now, what I want to talk about is how all of us are connected to history. Sometimes people read about history and go, yeah, that was a long time ago. Those people have been dead a long time. Who cares? But really, when you study history, you are learning about yourself. And I'm going to show you in the next few minutes how that works. And then we'll start talking about early California. Okay? All right, we're going to use something I call a relationship chart. Now listen to this carefully. We're going to put a person here, this spot, and that can be you. And every one of you has a father and a mother. Okay? At some point, you were born, you had a father and a mother. Okay? Now, okay, so consider this to be your father. It's a blue dot. Consider this to be your mother. It's sort of a pink dot. Okay, you can't see the color real well from your mouth. Just understand what this is. Now, your father had a mom and a dad. And your mother had a mom and a dad. So these are your parents, mom and dad and mom. Who are these people? Who are you? And hey, I like the way you raised your hand. I forgot to tell you that at the beginning. If you have a question or comment, raise your hand, okay? I'll call on you to talk. First you raise your hand. Okay.
Your grandfather and
your
grandmother?
grandfather and your grandmother. Okay, you have 2 parents, a mom and a dad. How many grandparents do you have? Yes? 4. You have 4 grandparents. Now, each one of these grandparents had a dad and a mom, right? So your grandparents, here's your grandpa's dad, mom, here's grandma's dad, mom. What do we call these people? Anybody know? Yes.
Great-grandparents.
Your great-grandparents, right, your great-grandparents. Now you had 2 parents, you had 4 grandparents. How many great-grandparents do you have? Yes.
8.
8. Okay? 2, 4, 8. 8 great-grandparents. Now each one of those great-grandparents had a dad and a mom, right? Okay, so you had 8 of these great-grandparents. What do you call their parents? Who are the parents of your great-grandparents? Yes?
Great-grandparents.
Okay, well you had 8 great-grandparents, but each one of them had a dad and a mom, so who are they? Yes? Great. 2 times great, right? Great-great-grandparents, right? All right, now you had 8 great-grandparents. How many great-great-grandparents did you have? 16. Okay, you got some math students here. Very good. 16 great-great-grandparents. Each one of them had a dad and a mom. First of all, what do we call those people? Who are the parents of your great-great-grandparents?
Your great-great-great.
You're 3 times great, right? 3 times great-great-great-grandparents. You had 16 great-great-grandparents. How many third-time great-grandparents did you have? Yes?
32.
32. Okay, very good. 32 great-great-great-grandparents. Now, we're not going to do this all afternoon, but we're going to take it just 2 more steps, okay? So, the parents of your third great-grandparents are called your great-great-great-great-grandparents, or your 4 times great-grandparents, right? You had 32 third great-grandparents. How many fourth great-grandparents did you have?
64.
64. All right, we're getting there. Very good. It's a sharp class you have. Okay, one more step. One more step. The parents of your fourth great-grandparents are called your
Great-great-great-great-great.
your fifth great-grandparents, right? You had 64 fourth grades. How many fifth grades did you have? 128 fifth grade grandparents. Okay? 128 fifth grade grandparents. Well, you're doing pretty well. Maybe we'll take it 2 more steps. Just and then we'll stop.
256.
The parents, okay. We got fifth grade. We got 128. 128 fifth grade. Who are the parents of your fifth grade grandparents?
Great-great-great-great-great-great.
Sixth grade grandparents, right? 128 of the fifth grades. How many of the sixth grade grandparents?
256.
256. That is correct. 256 sixth grade grandparents. One more step we're going to do. The parents of your sixth grade grandparents, their moms and dads are called?
Great-great-great-great-great-great-great.
7 times great grandparents, right? Your 7 times great grandparents. All right. There were 256 sixth great grandparents. How many seventh grade grandparents did you have? Right here. Yeah.
512.
500. 500. And that's what this chart begins to represent here, okay? So we got one person starting off, and this can be you, this can be any of you, right? And then you got mom and dad, you got your 4 grandparents, you got your 8, 16, 32, 64. And I didn't have enough room, couldn't write small enough to go as far as we did orally here. Back to the 7th grade, where you had 512 people who are directly related to you, right? If they weren't where they were, you wouldn't be here today. All right, so this is called a relationship chart. Keep these things in mind. If you learn something here in the next few, feel free to jot something down here on your sheet. something you didn't know before we start today.
So isn't this called a family tree?
It's called a pedigree chart, yes. If you have names.
If you have names?
If you have the names, then usually a pedigree chart would have the person's name, where they're born, the dates, blah, blah. Okay, what I'm trying to get at is just the numbers.
The numbers of people.
Okay. Here's a familiar face, huh? All right. So what we're going to do here for our talk, we're going to take Rosa as an example, and we're going to go back into history with some of Rosa's ancestors. Because the people we were calling on, the grandparents, great-grandparents, these are called ancestors. People who came before you who are directly related to you. All right? So we have Rosa here, 2015, but she didn't just come here all by herself, okay? If we back it up a couple years, you can see that she is part of a family. Well, we have Pearl back there. She was a little younger then. We took the picture. Rose, her sister. So here's the key people here for this. Her dad, who's back here, and her mom, okay? So she had two parents, okay? Now we're going to pretend we have kind of a time machine. We're going to turn back. And we're already 2 years back. Let's jump back a few more years and see what we find. We're going to jump back 40 years. 40 years. What do you think this is?
Oh no.
That's me, right? That's me 42 years ago, right? And there's a beautiful lady in the back of the room, all right? That's Rose's grandma. And then we have two little children here, right? This person here is Rose's mom, okay? So we have Rose's mom, and then we have me and her mother. So now we're looking here at grandparents, okay? And we're going to crank this machine back again, another step. Back in 1958. This is me. 1958, okay? And there's my mother. Okay, so here's me, there's my mother, and then there's her mother, right here, okay? So we're moving it back into history, and that's my grandfather over there on the other side, okay? So as we move back into history, you get more ancestors who are alive. Okay? More ancestors are alive. Right now, I'm Rose's grandfather. My ancestors have passed away, okay? But if you go back in history, you find them, and they're there, okay? All right, turning back to... We're going back to 1921. And my mother is this baby right here. Okay? Being held by her mother. All right, so the baby here is Rose's great-grandmother. And so this lady would be her great-great-grandmother. Her great-great-grandmother, all right? Now, if we move this back another 10 years, we find these two older ladies. This is her great-great-great-great-grandmother. 4 times great-grandmother, right here, all right? In 1910. And this is that same lady named Carolina Moraga de Dominguez. Carolina Moraga, all right? Rose's fourth great grandmother, around 1866, almost 150 years ago, all right? Now looking at our chart then, 4 times 4 great, how many of these 4 times great people were there? Remember that? Third grade was 32. What was 4th grade? How many 4th grade? 64. 64. So she's one of 64 4th grade grandparents that Rosa had here. All right. She was born here in California. All right. Born in California. And we're going to talk for a minute. We're going to go back another 90 years to this person, who is the lady we just looked at, Carolina Moraga, it's her great-grandfather. So that would be Rose's 7th great-grandfather, named Jose Joaquin Moraga, 1776, the same year that the American colonies were beginning to rebel against the English. We're going to pick up his story. What's he look like he's doing here? Any idea what he... Yes.
War?
Say again?
War?
War? I think he might be a soldier. Yes, he is a soldier.
Oh,
And this story is going to start out before there were any European people descended from European ancestors in California. Okay? Only the Native Americans lived here. Is where we're going to start this particular story. All right, so here is what I wanted you to understand. And if you didn't know this before, you might jot this kind of thing down. The people who are related to you in the past are called your ancestors. Okay? And the further you go back into history, the more ancestors you have who were alive at the time. Now, we just said that the man whose picture we saw, Joseph Joaquin Moraga, was Rose's 7th great-grandparents. Anybody remember what the number was connected to 7th grade? That was the last one we stopped on. Yes?
Me?
Yeah.
The 7th grade one was 128.
No, higher than that.
You mean 9th grade or something?
Ninth generation probably. 7th grade. Yes.
7th grade is 128, but 9th grade is 512.
500. 7th grade. Okay. 900. It's 512. Okay. So 512 people, and this is for all of you. Around 1776, all of you had about 512 people walking around the face of the earth doing different things. They may not have been in the what was going to become the United States. We weren't here at that point in time, but they were other places in the world. 512 were alive, carrying out their business. And so knowing who your ancestors are makes the study of history a lot more fun, because you're not just reading about these people. These are your ancestors we're talking about here. Okay? People who are directly connected to you. All right. Can we change the...
Yes. Hold on. Ready?
No, I think we're okay. All right. So, keep the numbers in mind, keep the person in mind, and we're going to get on to the next part of the presentation, which is the Anza expedition. How did people get to what is today California, except for the Native Americans? How did this happen? What was the story like? I'm going to start to go through, and if you have something to say, you can raise your hand and go. All right, let's start with the early explorers. And you've probably talked a little bit about these people in the past. Are these familiar names to you at all from your study of California? All right, so we'll go through this fairly quick, just to refresh your brains, because I know now you've been building missions. You probably did this a couple months ago. So let's talk about Columbus for a moment. Christopher Columbus sailed from Spain, 1492. Does anybody remember what he was trying to accomplish? Yes.
He was trying to sail to India.
He was trying to sail to India. Very good. He thought he could sail from Spain across the Atlantic and get to India, right? What happened to him? Yes.
He thought he was in India, but he actually landed in...
Yeah, he thought he landed on some island. He said, well, this must be India then, right? Didn't know that this is a whole nother 2 continents that existed here between Europe and Asia, right? All right, but that was an important discovery, and others came over, and Columbus went back to Spain, and he came back again, and it took him a long time. And actually, he's not the one who decided, hey, what? This is new land here. This is not India at all. Yes, yes.
So Columbus also actually named the Native Americans the Red Indians here.
The Indians,
When he came to California.
because he didn't get to California. He named them here in the Caribbean. He never got to California. Nobody knew about California at that time. Okay? All right. Now, 1492, 30 years go by. A guy named Cortez comes along. Anybody know about Cortez? Okay, you do?
I believe that my brother said something about him. He's another person that explored America /
He was an explorer, right? And what he had done, see, the Spanish were looking for some gold, all right? That was one of their big drives. There's got to be some gold here somewhere. And so they began to send out different explorations to find it. And here in what is today Mexico, there was a civilization of Native Americans called the Aztecs. And they were seen to have a lot of gold and silver, perhaps. Cortez went in there with some soldiers, horses. The Aztecs had never seen horses. Horses are not native to the Americans, okay? They were just, whoa, what's this? This guy, this beast, and he's riding on, and they have guns. And he basically conquered the Aztecs without a tremendous fight, took over the leadership, and established the Spanish control of what is today the country of Mexico. This is called New Spain at the time. New Spain, all right? Now, they were still looking for gold, so a guy named Coronado began to explore up into what is today the Southwest. He heard that there was 7 cities of gold out there, but he couldn't find them. He kept looking around and trying to communicate. And again, he had horses with him. The Native Americans had never seen horses. Some of his horses got away. The Native Americans took the horses and began to say, these are pretty neat. Began to raise them. So when you see pictures of the Native Americans on horseback, their headdresses, those horses are coming basically from the horses that escaped from the Spanish. They got out onto the plains and were captured by the Native Americans and began to use them themselves for hunting and warfare. But Coronado was out there 2 years. He came back, no cities of gold, okay? But he did have some writings about what was kind of out here, and it was a dangerous area. There wasn't much in the way of food production. It was desert, and the Native Americans were not too happy with him, and they began to kind of fear, and there was a little bit of anger between the Native Americans and the Spanish at this point in time here in what is today the American Southwest and the northern part of Mexico. All right, so still, nobody knows anything about this area over here on the west coast. All right, until this man comes along, Cabrillo. Cabrillo has sailed around South America, and he's come up, and it's his job to kind of explore and to tell the Spanish kings what is that's over here. So he began to make landfall a couple points, write down if there are any safe harbors, what do the Native Americans look like, are there any resources, what are you seeing there? And he did map out some of the areas along the coast of what is today California. But then he died on one of the islands, the Channel Islands off the coast of Ventura County where I live, there shortly after 1542. So no big fight. The value of his voyages was to let the Spanish know yes, this is a big ocean over here. There are a couple of harbors, but it's a long way to get there. A lot of desert area in between. The Spanish were focusing their work right here in what is today Mexico City. They were going up here and finding silver mines, so silver was coming down, going back to Spain, and they were kind of content with that, just to bring in the silver.
7 minutes.
Four rings starting. In my old school, that would be the beginning of a fire alarm. Let's hope that doesn't happen here. Okay. All right. it took 200 more years after Cabrillo for the Spanish to say, maybe we better get out here and do something with this land here, what they call Alta California. This piece along here was called Baja California, Alta California. We got to do something with it. And the reason we have to do something with it is other nations are interested, potentially interested, in setting up their colonies in this area. Cabrillo had come, put the flag on the ground, say it belongs to Spain, but then nobody did anything with it, right? For 200 years. Now what was happening? Well, the English were moving across, establishing their colonies. The French were coming down from what is today Canada. The Russians were coming in, hunting otters and fur, and coming down, seals, and moving down, and beginning to set up posts along the west coast. So the Spanish king, on the advice of the viceroy in Mexico City, said, we better do something here. We better send somebody out. And so Father Serra and Gaspar de Portola began to do something about this, to try to set up some missions. Father Serra was a Franciscan priest who wanted to Christianize the Native Americans, to set up these missions, and all of you have done your mission projects, so you know how that story went. But they first came, they had to walk up from Baja California, the long walk, just a few soldiers along with them, there wasn't any families or kids, and 1769 began to set up a presidio in San Diego, in the missions. And this went on for a couple of years. The Spanish priests were setting up in San Diego in 1769. Who had San Diego mission in here? And you did. Okay, so you know how that went. The next year, up at Carmel, what is today San Luis Obispo area, or Monterrey, excuse me, Monterrey. Who had that? Did you have Carmel mission? Okay, so you know how that went. And then who had San Antonio? They